In the early hours of March 14, 1943, the Baltic Sea stretched outward as a flat, black expanse beneath a sky stripped clean of moon and stars, the darkness so complete that horizon and water merged into a single void broken only by faint streaks of phosphorescence curling off the bows of moving vessels. And within this silence 12 British coastal forces craft advanced with engines throttled down to auxiliaries, their wooden hulls slicing through cold water without a whisper as Lieutenant Commander Andrew Mallory stood exposed on the bridge of MTB 314, collar turned against the wind, binoculars raised as he studied the faint glow of navigation lights far ahead, knowing with absolute clarity that this was not a routine interception but a deliberate challenge to German control of the Baltic, a region the enemy believed sealed by distance, weather, and air patrols. And Mallory understood that every mile covered in silence represented doctrine put into practice, years of accumulated experience distilled into a single night where success depended not on armor or numbers but on timing, coordination, and the willingness of junior officers to act decisively without hesitation. German convoy Adlergruppe II had departed Danzig at dusk carrying manganese ore, refined copper, and precision machine components bound for Hamburg and the Ruhr, materials essential to sustaining tank production and artillery output. Escorted by 6 Vorpostenboot and 2 newly commissioned Marinefarprum whose commanders believed their layered defenses sufficient against air attack and dismissive of surface threats so deep within controlled waters, a confidence reinforced by winter seas, and the assumption that British coastal craft could neither reach nor survive such distances, yet British intelligence, working through decrypted Enigma traffic and aerial reconnaissance, had mapped the convoy's route, speed, and escort disposition in meticulous detail, allowing Mallory's flotilla to sail from Visby under complete radio silence. Each boat commander briefed thoroughly yet trusted to interpret events independently once contact was made, a level of operational trust that stood in sharp contrast to the centralized command structures dominating German naval doctrine. As the British formation closed the interception point, Mallory reviewed the plan one final time in his mind, a plan simple in design yet demanding flawless execution, with 4 motor gunboats assigned to engage the escort screen from the seaward flank using overwhelming close-range firepower, 6 motor torpedo boats tasked with slipping inshore under the shadow of the Pomeranian coast to strike the merchant column itself, and 2 reserve boats held back to exploit breakthroughs or conduct rescue operations should the inevitable occur, this layered approach reflecting hard lessons learned in the Channel and Mediterranean where isolated attacks had failed but coordinated assaults succeeded. And Mallory knew that the Germans, trained to respond to single-axis threats, would struggle to comprehend an engagement unfolding simultaneously across multiple vectors at night, under illumination controlled by the attacker rather than the defender. At precisely 0217 hours, the distant drone of aircraft engines reached the British boats, and moments later RAF Coastal Command aircraft arrived overhead on exact schedule, releasing parachute flares that blossomed into blinding magnesium suns above the convoy, turning night into stark artificial daylight and freezing every ship, gun mount, and deck crew in merciless clarity. German signal lamps flashing frantically as crews scrambled to man weapons and return fire, but before defensive coordination could be established, Mallory gave the attack order. Throttles slammed forward across the flotilla as engines roared to life and the sea erupted with spray. British boats accelerating past 40 knots while Oerlikon cannons and twin Vickers machine guns opened fire, their tracer arcs stitching across water and steel, tearing through unarmored gun positions and exposed bridge crews who had trained for air attack, not fast-moving surface targets closing at lethal speed. MTB 314 and her sister boats drove directly into the escort screen, firing continuously as they maneuvered aggressively to confuse German gunners whose heavy weapons traversed too slowly to track such rapid movement. Vorpostenboot V-1704 suffering immediate devastation as her forward gun crew was cut down before firing more than a single round. Ammunition lockers rupturing under sustained 20mm fire and flames licking up the superstructure as she sheared out of formation, her captain wounded, and command collapsing within minutes, while nearby escorts attempted to respond with 88mm fire that splashed uselessly behind British hulls already past the firing solution, and in the confusion German commanders misidentified the gunboat assault as the primary attack, committing their attention and firepower to repelling it while the true killing blows slipped silently past their distracted defenses. Under the coastline's dark silhouette the MTBs advanced unseen, exploiting gaps measured in seconds, closing to torpedo range with extraordinary precision as MTB 617 launched 2 torpedoes that ran true and struck the freighter Eisenfels amidships, the detonation ripping open cargo holds and flooding machinery spaces so rapidly that the vessel rolled and capsized within minutes. Crewmen scrambling desperately into oil-slicked water as flames spread across the surface, while moments later MTB 602 fired at the Marinefar F-192, the torpedo detonating beneath her flat-bottomed hull and snapping her keel, lifting the vessel bodily before she fell back broken and began sinking with most of her crew trapped below decks, the shockwaves echoing across the convoy and shattering any remaining illusion of control. German radio operators transmitted frantic, contradictory reports to shore commands unable to assemble a coherent picture of events unfolding faster than messages could be processed, while British boats maneuvered independently according to circumstance, engaging targets of opportunity, withdrawing to reload, and re-entering the fight without awaiting orders. A fluidity that turned the engagement into chaos from the German perspective, aboard Vorpostenboot V-1812 where Oberbootsman Karl Heinemann attempted to rally his men after his captain was killed, ordering emergency course changes to evade torpedoes, yet his helmsman hesitated awaiting confirmation as doctrine demanded, that brief pause proving fatal when a torpedo struck aft and blew the stern apart, killing 12 instantly and leaving survivors later to describe the British attackers as impossibly fast, appearing where least expected and vanishing before retaliation could be organized. Amid the violence Mallory observed MGB 327 take a direct hit from an 88mm shell that obliterated her aft section, fuel igniting instantly as flames engulfed the deck, and without hesitation he ordered his own boat alongside under covering fire, British sailors hauling wounded men from freezing water as shells splashed around them, the rescue completed in minutes despite the danger. After which the crippled gunboat was scuttled to prevent capture, every survivor saved, an act reflecting the unspoken code of coastal forces where no man was abandoned regardless of tactical risk, and this moment, repeated countless times across similar actions, embodied the leadership philosophy that bound crews together under the most extreme conditions imaginable. By 02:49 hours the engagement had effectively ended, the convoy shattered beyond recovery with 2 merchants sunk, 1 escort destroyed, another crippled and abandoned, remaining vessels fleeing toward shallow waters under smoke cover while British boats disengaged on signal and dispersed at high speed, vanishing into darkness before Luftwaffe night fighters could be vectored to the scene, leaving behind drifting wreckage, burning oil, and the silent evidence of doctrine tested and found wanting. A decisive action accomplished in under 40 minutes that denied critical materials to German industry and reinforced a strategic truth German command had yet to accept, that coastal waters offered no sanctuary when contested by crews trained to think faster than orders could be written. The consequences of the Adlergruppe II action extended far beyond the immediate losses, as German Naval Command issued internal memoranda demanding tighter control over escort maneuvers and stricter adherence to engagement protocols, responses that paradoxically deepened the rigidity British forces exploited, while British after-action reports emphasized decentralized command, rapid decision-making, and combined arms coordination between air and surface units, lessons refined and repeated through 1943 and 1944 as similar engagements unfolded along Europe's coasts, gradually strangling Axis maritime logistics without the need for fleet-scale battles, and forcing Germany to divert disproportionate resources to convoy defense with diminishing returns. Lieutenant Commander Mallory survived the war and later rose to command a destroyer squadron, yet he would write privately that nothing equaled the intensity of those nights in small boats where seconds determined survival, while German survivors told parallel stories decades later describing confusion, terror, and reluctant admiration for an enemy unconstrained by hierarchy. One former Vorpostenboot officer remarking that British boats fought like wolves, striking and withdrawing without warning, A phrase that captured the psychological impact of coastal warfare more accurately than official histories. And strategically, these actions mirrored those in the Channel and North Sea, where British motor torpedo boats forced Germany to concede effective control of the littoral zone. The night of March 14, 1943, became one entry among hundreds in the unofficial chronicle of the narrow seas, where wooden hulls, exposed gun crews, and young officers proved that speed, initiative, and trust in junior leadership could overturn material disadvantage again and again. A lesson learned at high cost by those who believed rules and ranks could substitute for adaptability. And a legacy carried forward by men who brought their crews home, leaving behind only scuttled hulls, empty shell casings, and the enduring knowledge that in coastal war mastery belonged not to those who waited for orders, but to those who understood the moment and seized it without hesitation.